a lot of that traditional integrated campaign motion is inherently waterfall. And even in content production, you do have to like create a brief and then make a draft and then review that brief. Like that is just inherently waterfall. So I actually recently have been landing with my team a more agile approach where we have basically content pods with rolling insight and reporting at the top, feeding everything.
Welcome to the Animals Podcast. I'm Ty Magnan.
And I'm Tim Mess.
This season on the Animals Podcast, we're pulling back the corporate curtain to show you how the largest, most complex B2B SaaS teams actually get content out the door. Hear from content leaders from some of the biggest names in SaaS, sharing the systems they've built, the battles they've fought, and the lessons they learned along the way. Today, we're chatting with Kate Pluth. She's the head of content strategy at Dropbox. Kate's been the powerhouse behind Dropbox's content for the last 4 years. She currently manages a pretty large team that sits under integrated marketing. Before this, she helped on the transition from HelloSign to Dropbox Sign, that rebrand on that specific product. And before that, she was leading content at a global network called Metia. Today's conversation covered how Kate is using different systems and tools to build a content engine, how the team is using AI to get more content out the door or more effective content out the door, and also how she's structured her team into pods, and even how content works with other teams beyond marketing to make sure that they have one brand voice for Dropbox. Hope you enjoyed today's conversation with Kate Pluth. Kate, thanks so much for joining us on the Animals Podcast. Would love if you give a short intro for our audience that doesn't know you yet. And then, of course, you got to answer our favorite question. What content are you consuming lately?
My name is Kate Pluth. I head up the content strategy team at Dropbox. Prior to that, I came up the ranks through agency and have had a whole track record in B2B tech marketing. I love the humble utility, whether that's e-signature or cloud storage, you name it. I just like to help people make informed decisions about how to do their best work. Yeah. And content I'm consuming, this is not very nerdy, it's not very business oriented, but the first thing that comes to mind is that I am a New York Times cooking nerd. And actually, as a content experience, I feel like New York Times cooking has so well dialed in that whole website and app.
Yeah.
In terms of content systems where it, can move from different devices, and they've really thought it through, and the notes and the comments, it really creates a community around it. And everything they're doing now with video is so interesting. I just love it.
Yeah, I think I've underappreciated that up until now. So thanks for shining a light on you think it's good.
My first job was editing hotel descriptions for Expedia. And it was, the day-to-day was very rote and boring, but the content system and the content models that they have created is so incredible. Just to be able to, they basically have a whole content ecosystem that is like checkboxes of amenities, and they've created a proprietary Mad Lib system to generate all of their hotel descriptions across 7 points of sale, across a bajillion languages all over the world. And then they realize with the content, they're on a landmine of content. And so now they license it to other people as well. It's incredible. And so that to me is like, oh, New York Times, like they've figured that out with the recipes and the cooking as well. It's just like an incredible, valuable repository of like all the content models and how it's all dynamically fed.
Yeah.
I'm a nerd for this stuff.
Yeah. And that was like before the age of Gen AI too.
Yes. They've been doing this forever. Yeah.
Interesting. You got my wheels turning already. I was originally going to ask, like, oh, what's the last thing you cooked for the New York Times cooking suite?
Oh, I did a riff on their tamale pie. My CSA box had this beautiful blue corn meal in it the other week, and I'm like, okay, we got to make some tamale pie. Nice.
Came out good?
Yeah, it was.
Now I'm hungry.
Tamale pie. We'll put it in the show notes. Okay, let's talk about Dropbox in content. I think one thing, this whole season's about enterprise content. And one thing that kind of helps ground it is if you can help us understand the sense of scale of like what the content operations looks like at Dropbox. So maybe it's just like total employees at Dropbox, maybe total people in marketing. That'd be a helpful, just like anchoring data point.
Yeah, well, Dropbox as a company sits at about 2,000 people, which actually is, I think, is a helpful reminder that for the incredible, hundreds of thousands, millions of in our customer base. We're able to serve them with a relatively lean company size. And within marketing, we sit across, there's product marketing, integrated marketing, brand marketing. Those teams work in lockstep. And the my content strategy team sits horizontally in integrated marketing, kind of connecting the dots from the go-to-market strategy from PMM, helping inject content across all of our paid and owned channels, and then working with our brand marketing team to think about how we connect that really top of funnel brand story into something that is relevant to somebody on a buyer journey.
Interesting. So you're sitting in integrated marketing
Yep.
and therefore
Yep.
like serving the organization through the creation of content that needs to go within an integrated campaign. Is that about right?
Yes, and the integrated campaign model is one that we have really been working to up level over the last year, and to truly not just be, each channel in their own silo, but really thinking about how do we go to market against our ICPs in a truly integrated way, and what's the best way to do that, especially when we want to have a really fast pace of learning and not have like a big clunky quarterly plan that makes it really hard to update if we're learning something new halfway through that.
So what kind of changes have you been making there? I'm curious what you've implemented.
Yes, yes. So the crux of this, I've been thinking a lot about Agile versus waterfall in our content operations lately, because a lot of that traditional integrated campaign motion is inherently waterfall. And even in content production, you do have to like create a brief and then make a draft and then review that brief. Like that is just inherently waterfall. The playbook that, even analysts purport is sort of you treat this cornerstone asset and then you derive and distribute that, for a long time, and that is a really efficient way to work. It's a great way to work, but again, if you are learning new things along the way, it takes a lot of confidence in an idea and in a target audience to be able to create that cornerstone asset and make it really good today, and to have enough of a shelf life that you can continue to distribute that same idea in other ways over time. Yeah, if we were going to do something that was more agile, like what was that going to look like? So I actually recently have been landing with my team a more agile approach where we have basically content pods
Hmm.
with rolling insight and reporting at the top, feeding everything. And then it's all based on, yeah, what is the nature of what it takes to get that content done. So from performance standpoint, you've got really quick turn, like ad copy, experiment variants, landing pages, emails, like those things, like you should be able to just like turn around really
So
quickly.
that's a pod, like performance
That's a pod.
content.
And then we've got an explanatory content pod is kind of what I'm calling it. I don't know if it's the best name, but it's that core content that's like medium form or long form.
Yeah.
Your guides, your articles, your explainer videos,
How-tos.
use cases, those kinds of things that, there are ways, yes, you can use AI to support that. There are ways you're probably going to use agencies or things. Yeah, it's just like a different motion, but can you get it to be like, just let them focus on having a really predictable monthly drumbeat where something is going live every week. We know what's going to be happening each month. If you've got a new ICP you want to be testing, okay, we'll slot you in. If you have, a new something that you want to try, it's like, okay, we've got a way to like absorb changes and absorb learnings without breaking stride.
Hmm.
And then I've got two additional pods that are just kind of unique ways that we have to treat content. One is for our customer content, customer stories and customer testimonials. Is if you can't just kick one of those off whenever you want, because you need to have a customer who's like game and ready to tell their story. So, and the way you handle and make the most of that customer engagement really takes some certain ways that you need to produce it in order to get that done effectively. So that's in its own pod. And then we have a thought leadership kind of experiential pod. Is again, I don't know if the name's right, but we have a liaison with our virtual events and webinars, thinking about, okay, do we have a thought leadership storytelling framework that we really have somebody sinking their teeth in, talking to executives across the business, talking to different customers, getting the right folks to have a draw to be a feature on those events, and using that as a way to kind of create a wiki for what are the hot takes that we want to be having across all of our content.
Really interesting. So again, the thesis is like the operations of each of those pods is significantly different, enough so that it's like it makes sense to group them accordingly. Within each pod, Kate, you have, I know there are writers, but like who else would be in a pod?
Yeah, strategist, producer. It's honestly, we've got some kind of strategist or program manager, and then some kind of producer really at the heart of it, coming up with the ideas, seeing the ideas, especially. And then we've got, writing, design, video, videography is a big one too.
Within each pod, videography?
Within two of them, yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, because that's how people wanna consume content now, increasingly is,
Yeah.
this is a podcast
Yeah,
and
it's
we're on
very,
video.
yeah, yeah. How many people are on this content team?
Our team is 8 right now.
Okay. And then what about that top layer of like data analytics? I know you didn't call it that, but maybe reframe it as what you do.
We work really closely with our data science team and our performance media teams and, like, all the other teams that are directly have their hands on the data to get that feedback loop in place. Yeah.
And it feeds into all the pods, right? So they all get data back on everything that they're doing. Yeah. Okay. That's great.
Yes.
They each have somewhat unique KPIs then too.
Yes, yes. With all of that, I've got KPIs for volume and velocity of delivery. KPIs for engagement is the other piece that I think is the thing that we really are owning in our integrated campaigns. Is we've got other teams who are doing all these activations, but really, is the content working?
Yeah.
That's the
Reading it,
engagement.
watching
So
it,
that's what,
clicking
yeah,
around.
that's what we're looking at. Yeah.
Nice. Really interesting. And so I imagine that there's content being produced outside of your team at Dropbox, such as product marketing, maybe brand. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, that's exactly honestly, this is why I love being a content person, because there are, of course, in any enterprise, any organization, there's no way for one team to actually be doing all of the content. But it means you get to engage and work with all sorts of people across the business to at least connect the dots of like, okay, this is the part of the conversation I'm responsible for. What are you guys doing? And can we make sure that as we're going to market, we still come across as one Dropbox and we're not multiple personalities? And so that is something that we've been working really closely with our brand marketing team to think about how does that brand campaign follow into the rest of the funnel. I also keep really good close tabs with our folks in CX, like our Learn and our Help Center, our content designers, folks who once they're a customer, they're creating a bunch of really great content too. And they've got some really inspirational scaled successes and like things that they're doing with AI for updating their video libraries that we should all be learning about, not just the tactics, but also what's being made and making sure that we're not completely duplicating any efforts.
What is the relationship like between you and these other teams? Like, is it formal? Is it informal? And I know you have this kind of like governance council. Maybe you can tell us a little bit about that too.
Oh, yeah. Well, it's mostly informal. The editorial council at Dropbox was a way to somewhat formally bring everybody who writes on behalf of the company together. Frankly, it was mostly volunteer run for a while, but connected folks across content design and CX and marketing and product marketing and even legal and localization and folks who are looking across all of like the mechanics of words and all of those things at Dropbox. Yeah, and that was where we had different folks who were in kind of like leadership ways, and we had programming in a monthly meeting, and it was the group that was looking after the Dropbox writing guidelines. Although I'm using past tense.
Yeah. Oh,
We collectively sort of realized over time too that to really be able to enforce some of this quality bar and some of these guidelines and raise the visibility of them across the company to folks who needed to know but didn't always know that it existed, that we needed some kind of like better endorsement. We were already feeling that, and at the same time it was really becoming apparent our CEO really cares about quality writing and really wants that to be an important element of our craft at the company. And so last fall the writing studio was formed, and that is it is a much more like kind of formal, like that team now is accountable for writing quality at the company. And now we all kind of centrally liaise with them on, okay, what is the training? What are the guidelines? How do we implement AI in the right way on behalf of those guidelines? And then what is the kind of tiered resourcing framework that they have of like what do their writers work on personally, and then what is outsourced to other teams, and then or what is just below the line.
So it's sort of like the higher level operating model around content production.
Yes, and they actually sit. So we've got our writing studio and we've got our brand studio, and so they sit together to kind of think about words and pictures.
Yeah. And making sure, again, this idea of one.
Visual brand and the brand volume writing.
Do you kind of meet formally, or like how does that work? Like when do you get together, or who? Yeah, how does it work in terms of the actual syncing on things as the writing studio?
Yeah, well, frankly, at this point, I'm just talking to the writing studio all the time. Our goals are so aligned. They too have their own pods to think about different aspects of writing across the company, whether that's content design or copywriting or much higher level thought leadership in being in the AI conversation from a communication standpoint. I'm just working with them all the time.
You mentioned this sort of like framework of what gets done in-house by team or like outsourced to another team. I'm curious to learn more about that. And I also imagine that there's a few more levels to it, like such as outsourcing to an agency.
Yeah.
AI comes in at a layer.
Yeah. Yeah.
Do you have any framework like that?
Yeah, just as a philosophy, I've been thinking about with teams when you're managing a team who looks after content, is that your in-house folks, you want them to be prioritized on the most highly visible things.
Totally.
Um, whether that's a product launch or your homepage, like those types of surfaces and places that are just incredibly visible and the most impactful. But as we were just talking about a bit ago, like there's always going to be more content that needs to be created than a single content team can handle. And those in-house folks are the ones who are always shoulder tapped first because they're the face.
Sure.
So they need a release valve. Every team that I've managed has need some kind of release valve like that. And that's where the tiered resourcing can kind of come in, whether you expose that tiering logic to your stakeholders or not, I think you can decide. But it's been something that was really helpful for our writers before to be able to feel like they had a way, even if they were going to say no, that they had still a way to make sure people had some support and have some oversight, some kind of guardrail on the quality of what was getting produced, even if they weren't in it with their own hands. And that's where agency can come in, agency relationships for like a certain tier. And then increasingly, we actually ended up using, we have Writer at Dropbox, the AI platform.
Writer.com.
And that became a way that like, hey, like, this investment, you're on your own, but we have this tool, like you can have suggestions and like get some proofreading to make sure it's brand aligned. If this is a repeatable use case, like we can build an app around this and bring in like our best examples of good and really fine tune what it is. So that effectively, becomes one of the resourcing layers at your disposal.
And so then folks are allowed to go work with whatever agency they want, or is there a short list of like approved agencies plus their users?
We have a certain set of agencies that are onboarded to our brand, and in certain seasons here, I've been kind of centralizing that management with me or with writing studio so that we onboard them. They have the full understanding of what the quality bar is, but then other folks can request their services and know that it's going to have some of that helpful onboarding and oversight.
Nice. It's funny. There's so many similarities to the program it sounds you built at Dropbox to what we had going at UiPath when I was leading like the government's council for sure. The problem we had to solve there was, we had just hundreds of people contributing content across the organization with who knows what agency, who knows what writers, and all kinds of different quality, right? All kinds of different terminology. Yeah. I mean, the kind of stuff that you see with that setup. So we had the council, and then we used writer.com as well. One thing we did was create these driver's license quizzes, which basically said, hey, listen, if you want to write content for UiPath, you have to like pass this really simple, like 20-question test around our voice and our tone or terminology and some of this. And if you pass that, then you get a license to writer. My team funded it. And that then is like your permission. And also you get access to the CMS, like at least like certain,
Uh-huh,
like,
uh-huh, uh-huh,
and
uh-huh.
now you're
Uh-huh.
like, a permitted
Yes.
thing.
That's nice.
So that was really cool for us. And then another thing we did is that tiered approach. It's like we had 3
Yes.
tiers. Tier 1, strategic content, we did in-house. Tier 2, still pretty important content. We would outsource it, but we would fund it, right? So like came out of our budget. So I'm curious if you have something similar. And tier 3 was like, we have no interest. Like, here's some approved agencies or like just have at it. And the writer license came into play there too. Uh, do you all fund like the work that you can't get to? Is that coming out of your budget?
For things in integrated marketing where we still know it's something that's important for our integrated campaigns.
Right,
Yeah.
right. You have to get it done. So therefore it's going to come out of your budget.
If you're like most B2B content marketers, you want to lead the conversation in your industry. At Animals, we help B2B software companies do exactly that by creating standout, survey-driven, state-of-the-industry type reports that help you grow your brand authority, backlinks, and pipeline. In just 12 weeks, we run a process that helps uncover narratives from a unique data set packaged into a beautifully designed flagship content asset that your whole team is going to be proud of. Book a consult now at animals.co/whitepapers and find out how to set the new benchmark for your industry.
What are some of the biggest bottlenecks in content creation that you have today?
We actually we do an employee satisfaction survey a couple times a year. And the biggest thing that really came back from my team recently was its approvals and its project management, which in some ways doesn't surprise me that if you've got content experts, the creation part actually should be pretty easy if you know your direction. But in a larger company where people are using a bunch of different project management systems and you've got a whole set of stakeholders who, need to be reviewing it. There's so many manual steps involved in updating tickets and chasing things on, chasing reviews on Slack. And if a date slips, then having to manually update your whole work track schedule. And that is what I've been hearing loud and clear from the team over the last bit, that if you really want a humming content engine, you've got to automate as much of that as you possibly can. In my first couple of years, Dropbox, I was dedicated to our e-signature product.
Hello.
And
yeah, we use it.
Yes, Hello Sign, and it was renamed to Dropbox Sign. We had a content team of 2, and so we just did not have time to be doing any of that. And shout out to Corey on my team. We're actually a case study with Airtable for what he was able to implement.
Oh, wow.
We tripled production with a flat budget. We had incredible business impact numbers because we just really dialed in the our content operations. And to me, what this all works backward from is the content calendar, because everybody wants a content calendar. Everybody wants to know, hey, when is your content available? What are you working on? And when can I have it? And I have participated in trying to do the spreadsheet content calendar so many times, and it always is out of date immediately. People never, especially if it's a cross-functional one, people never add their stuff. And so within a week, it's almost useless.
Okay.
So to me, it's all about automating the content calendar because it works when it's connected to your work backflows and your standard operating procedures and your content types and the campaigns that it might be part of and the audience that it's for, all of your segmentation taxonomy, all of those things, just embed that, create that system. So that if a date moves, okay, it just updates in the calendar and people just know. And then if you have a question hey, what content do we have for HR? Or what content do we have for Dash, our AI product? You can just, you can use all of that to easily sift in and understand that information.
Right. That's nice. So that way you don't have to answer these one-offs. You can just kind of point people to this.
Yes. Yeah. And we're in the process. We're actually really almost there. I'm so excited of finally rebuilding that back up on a much bigger scale for Dropbox as a whole, to be able to have that automated content calendar again. And we'll have Kanban views and everybody will have all their things, and we're going to connect it to Slack notifications so that people get automatic notifications they need to review things. I can't wait for the day when I can just like open up our project tool and just see
Yeah.
this is what
What?
this is what I need to review today.
Yeah, that's great. This is all Airtable. Like that's at the core of this.
Now we're not using Airtable now. We're using a different tool now, but same. At this point, I don't even care what project management tool it is. You just have to pick one and configure it.
It works and can automate. What else is in your tech stack? So I think we talked about Writer. We talked about the automated content calendar. Are there other important tools that you and your team can't really live without?
Okay, there's one that I just kind of want to talk about more philosophically that I think is so useful for any content team, but I don't see it used that often in B2B, which is digital listening. Whether that's a tool or whether that you do that with services. And I guess I will shout out to Metia, because we had a whole service around digital listening, and I got very used to being able to pull insights from Brandwatch and, Sprinkler and like those kinds of tools to be able to understand what is the audience conversation that's happening out there. Yeah, to be able to come up with the right kind of content ideas. So being able to leverage those kinds of tools, I think, is increasingly important, especially because with the way that platforms are changing, with whether it's like AI overviews or, any platform doesn't want you to link out and it's becoming all dark. People spend a ton of their time on different social channels online and increasingly in forums and all of that. Like being able to see the conversations that are already happening there in aggregate and then figuring out what is my right as a brand to participate in those conversations. That's a kind of way that you actually create differentiated content.
Yeah. Well, and join the conversation.
Yeah, and join the conversation in a credible way. That feels like a secret weapon almost.
Yeah, it's great. So
and when I've had that data in the past for my team, it has given us just an incredible runway to be able to have a consistent flow of content ideas that are really rooted in an audience need.
I think especially for that team, the pod that's focused on timely, more news-oriented, high-frequency content, right? I imagine that's a really important part of their motion.
Yeah, or even for thought leadership too. It's like, well, if you want to have a interesting, differentiated take on AI today, it's so buzzy, but you have to be able to like ingest all of that conversation and like figure out like where is there a place, how is that evolving over time? Especially with that, the conversation is just evolving constantly. So you kind of have to stay on top of it in order to still feel relevant.
Why do you think, to keep it a little bit philosophical, why do you think that is, that not more content teams use such tools? Do you think there's a reason for it?
I don't know. I don't know. And I will say, I went to SparkToro's event and conference last year. SparkToro is a great tool, but they really skew towards smaller businesses. And maybe that's an interesting thing, that I think there's a lot of small businesses that can get really scrappy and do a lot of this themselves. But if you move into enterprises, it's still a lot around those very traditional qual and quant studies. Or just, talking to customers, which is great to do, and you should do all of it. But for whatever reason, maybe it is that a lot of the tools like Sprinkler and Brandwatch and all of that are most often used for brand monitoring. And so comms and PR professionals are really dialed into that, and it's used a lot in B2C. But I love the premise of deploying that same idea, but profiling an audience.
It's great. I also imagine it's going to be more and more important with answer engine optimization tactics. It's all about like your digital footprint. And so by participating in the relevant conversation now, I think you might gain some favor there. But again, like caveat is, I don't really know. Like we're still figuring out answer engines. So
well, I guess also now maybe with AI we can, as content teams, respond faster maybe than we could in the past. So if you're a little bit of a smaller team, sometimes you don't have the bandwidth to jump into certain things, whereas now that becomes maybe more doable. So yeah, maybe that's the kind of tool more people should look at it, even smaller teams.
Can we talk a little bit more about how you're using AI at Dropbox? I mean, I understand that you have Writer and there's a big AI component to it, maybe help educate the audience on a little bit more on how you specifically are using Writer or other AI tools.
Well, I'm so impressed with all of the ways that my team is finding to use AI, but in really thoughtful ways, not just completely outsourcing it, but using it just as a way to scale and to help them make them more efficient. I'll give an example to our video producer. He's created a custom GPT has pulled in all of his video project documents. And so not only is it something that he's using to like help move the video along, but he asks it questions about like, hey, like what's the status of XYZ? Or, like he's actually just using it to help him like manage his time. And that's where even Dropbox Dash, our universal search product, I find is one of those ones that like helps me in ways around my day that that isn't it's not about the content generation always, but it can do that. But to me, it's about all of those little paper cuts throughout the day that just add friction to focus and take time away from focusing on my day. Yeah, the marketers and creatives aren't always implementing those as much, and I feel like there's going to be a lot of opportunity around those kinds of things in the operations space, just to be able to organize our files in whether that's a link or a file in a different way. You can just simply search Control E, and it just is like a universal search for all across all of your apps. And that's another one for me. Like I'm constantly sharing context with my team and being able to know that I actually don't have to have a huge proliferation of tabs anymore. And I can just pull things up immediately and it gets it right. That's actually been a big habit change for me, is being able to like better access all of the company knowledge that we have and all of the background and context that we have, and be able to like redeploy that into our content projects more effectively and more efficiently.
Yeah, that's true. The internal ops is can take also so much time, like looking for, so there's something somewhere and you want to share it with somebody, and then like you spend forever looking for it, and
Yeah.
there's so many
Well,
little things.
and
Yeah,
marketing there's so much about it that is just inherently unstructured. And so I think that there's a space where it's like, okay, apps and agents, and create a system and create a workflow that's repeatable. But there are just things like, too, if you want to be experimenting with something new, there's just not a formula for that yet. And that's where something like Dash kind of fills the gap of just like, how do I pull all these things together and make something of it? Or how do I just keep track of all the things that we already know as a business?
Let's talk about content
Ty's
KPIs.
favorite topic. Yeah.
Okay.
It came recently. I
Yeah.
think one of them, basketball content KPIs. Recently you did like the Content Connect event, right?
Yeah.
Was that last year?
Yeah.
And you did a course on, I don't know, workshop on KPI, like a KPI framework. Can you give us a little brief of that?
Yes, in terms of a brief, I'm trying to remember. Well, Notch has a really great framework to think about like the impact of your content, and how to think about whether it's high reach and a lot of visits versus actual engagement, and where the things that are actually high reach but low engagement actually could be corrosive to your brand.
Yeah, sure.
You can't just think that like, oh, just because it's getting a lot of traffic means that it's good. And that was a big topic of that talk. The way that the other piece of that I was kind of introducing, there was a lot of discussion in that session as well, where we kind of broke out and talked to different people in the room about, hey, what are you working on, and how might you apply KPIs to it? What would be the right KPIs? And that's where I land at the end of the day. Is there's no like one set of KPIs for content. The annoying answer is just it depends, because depending on your content initiative, it might be a different goal. And maybe it just goes back to me being a psychology undergrad, this idea of, okay, there's subjective human behavior, and there are obviously things that you want people to do to engage with your business. How do you operationalize that behavior through a quantification, or a qualitative thing? But that's what your KPI, like what behavior are you trying to indicate? And so I think that is like a very helpful way to to think about KPIs and think about crafting KPIs. Picking the right KPIs is like, what is the behavior I'm trying to match with this? That's where for us right now, it's all about engagement. Okay, so if it's engaged, like if someone's engaging with this content, if it's a video, that's going to be view through rate. If it's a written article on a web page, maybe that's bounce rate, maybe that's time on page, maybe that's scroll depth. But it all just goes back to like, what's the indicator that somebody is actually finding this useful?
Kind of reminds me of, do you know the folks over at Forget the Funnel? It's like a consultancy.
No, but I read Digital Relevance by Ardath Albee is kind of an older book now, but she has that same idea of just like, screw the funnel. It's not a funnel.
Yeah, and then the whole philosophy is like
It's an experience.
map what the users do, like,
Yes.
okay, so like what are they doing to sort of come into your funnel? And then what are the KPIs that they're taking? It's sort of just like flipping it on its, like, what are users doing? And then find the KPIs that actually match their behaviors. It's a little bit in line with what you're talking about. Because so often when we set the metrics, and I think this is what you're trying to avoid here, it's like, what do I want them to do? It's like, well, I need them to like, click this button, sign up for this thing. And of course, those are going to be KPIs. But for you, you're thinking about it more from a behavioral lens, I suppose. What are they doing? And how can we find like a parallel metric that's resembling that closely?
Right.
If I'm getting it right. Where do you think we're heading with all this AI stuff, Kate?
Final question.
What I hope is that content teams then just to become the arbiters of taste. In my LinkedIn feed, and over the last like month or two, the word taste has blown up.
Sure.
And that's been my big reservation and in adopting AI, or not even reservation, but just in wanting to do it very thoughtfully and very ethically, is making sure that it's still in service of humans trying to connect with humans.
Yeah.
And the brand trying to like legitimately like help a prospect make an informed decision, help their customers get more value. So that's my hope. And that's certainly how I am adopting AI.
Yeah. Us too.
Yeah.
For now. I mean, I think, we keep asking each other this question, Tim and I, of like, is it possible that there is a type of content that you're producing for algorithms, kind of like only, like it's not really for humans, like for algos to then like parse and pull into their LLMs and then like feed back to someone when they're making a query? And we think increasingly like the odds of that are there are increasing odds of that being the case. I think there'll always be the thought leadership thing, right? Like what we're talking about mostly. But maybe we are starting to see a wider separation between these two types of content.
But that person who's still conversing with an LLM they're still going to want to read something and they're still going to want the right answer.
Yeah, I would agree. But the thought is like the content that you create for an LLM to sort of like parse and pull into something, like they're not going to click through that most of the time. You just want to give them the nuggets to see, and then they're going to like go to Dropboxes, whatever,
exactly.
engage with the brand.
But to me, that's just a continuation of a trend even we were already seeing with zero click, that it's like Instagram already wasn't letting you link out. YouTube you already just wanted to watch your YouTube video. Platforms were already making this a pattern in our content consumption habits. And LLMs to me are just like yet another one of those ways where people just want the information and the answer right there and don't want to have to be clicking through to a corporate website or any website for it.
That's a great insight to finish with, I think. Like LLMs are just also zero-click platforms. Yeah. I never thought about it that way, but it's true.
100%. Kate, where can people follow along with, with you or see what kind of content operations you're up to?
Oh, great. Well, I'm a bit of a lurker on LinkedIn, but you can find me there. And dash.dropbox.com.
When can I get Dash?
Plug.
I don't have it. How do I get it? When do I get it?
Contact sales and stay tuned for the fall.
All right. Cool.
Great.
Thanks so much, Kate.
Thanks.
Tim, what are your notes from today?
Well, first of all, I love that she like kind of even on the question of like, what content have you been consuming? We kind of like, it started with like, okay, New York Times cooking, but then we got straight into like content systems and things like that. And that was the first kind of note I took in my head, like the importance at the enterprise level of having a good system. An earlier guest also mentioned that, but Kate now also articulated that again of like, Yeah, if you, like, I mean, she didn't literally say that, but it's true. It's like when you have like a little blog, it's like, you can kind of manage, right? But then you get to the enterprise level, it's like the system actually starts to make such a difference in if you can operate it, how much time it costs you, and also the quality in a way. Like if you can't manage it well, then it just becomes impossible. And we didn't really talk about how she does this at Dropbox, but then there also she clearly, has thought a lot about how to structure things. She mentioned the automated content calendar and all these kind of things. So how important the operations get, like at the enterprise scale.
Yeah, I fully agree. That was my big takeaway too. It's like how much Kate is thinking about the system or the engine or the operating model, call it what you want, of content for Dropbox. So I'd say yes, in terms of her team structure and those pods, in terms of the tech stack and how that plays out. And then also beyond the integrated marketing team, the content team that she runs, how it fits into the larger organization with other teams that are also creating content. She's definitely one of the more systems thinking content leaders that we've had the privilege of chatting with, or at least like that came out really clearly in today's conversation.
I also like this idea of like, because we're talking about this a bit as well, like where you have teams, or in her case then pods, but that are like kind of working on different cycles. Like you have one team that is, she's like more, where they're running experiments, you need to do A/B tests, like email, ad copy. So they have to quickly like change things. And then she has a separate pod where people are thinking more about like, she called it, I would call it kind of editorial, educational content. She used another word for it, experience content. That are on a different rhythm, and then you have the thought leadership kind of pod that are focused on that. They have to work with the executive team and things like that. I think that's a really smart way to think about it, and I think it makes a lot of sense. Like you can't just fit all content to the same kind of team and workflow anymore. For your company, that structure might look slightly different, but I do think you need like different approaches and different workflows for and different reactive times of like your publishing cadence and things like that.
100%. We didn't dig into it too much, but the fact that she has video folk on at least 2 of those 4 pods is interesting. I haven't had a chance to check out all the video that Dropbox does, but makes sense in terms of the way we think content's heading in the coming years, that they're ahead of it a bit.
I liked the insight at the end, which kind of came out by accident, I think, but that like LLMs are also just zero-click platforms.
Thanks all for tuning in and listening to another episode of the Animals Podcast. We'll follow up in another few days and keep going on this journey with you all.
Thanks for listening. Bye-bye.